Okay, here we go. Lesson 1 on Catholic manhood today. And this is a brand new book released in June of 2016. And if we look at, students turn the text to page 6. I always wanted to say that. It's like, so it's great. Man. Okay, so here we break open Catholic manhood today. And I'm a pretty optimistic kind of person, I think. I just always believe, there's that scripture that says, we got to give the reason for the hope that lies within us. And of course, the ultimate hope is heaven. But I still believe there's hope here. And God intended it for us to operate in that way. So I like to make it a policy that whenever I point out a problem, I offer a solution. So that's a lot of what this book is about. So at the beginning, I might talk about a few problems, but the rest of the book is going to give you solutions. And that's just, like I say, the way I operate. So there, about halfway down page 6, I say, you'll find that throughout this book, we will define and reinforce genuine masculinity for its intended purpose. What's the purpose of masculinity? Well, it is to defend and protect the weak, to develop society, and to solve its problems. That's just my own personal observation. That's what I believe. That's why God created masculinity. Next paragraph, there are many problems. So, therefore, our masculinity needs to kick in to start solving some of these problems. Next, page 7, first paragraph, men aren't women. Okay, hard for our society to get a grips on that today, but let's get down to the basics. Men aren't women. Men are men, and actually God made man first. Then the woman came from him. We reference Genesis 2, verse 22. Men are meant to act like men, behave like men, regardless of any pressures from society. Otherwise, we need to strive to be real men. Tough, strong, decisive, driven. We tend to not be very emotional and possibly not as social, relatively speaking. We don't tend to be overly communicative or very open with our feelings. We are strong, rough, and usually loud. These are natural traits. They are not learned or conditioned. This is the way God made men. And so, throughout the book, to break it down, I'll give little examples and personal stories and things. So we've probably all heard the story of, the example of the kids in the sandbox, right? If you pass by a sandbox, you got little boys and little girls playing, and the little girls are going to be humming a tune, or playing, or they might have some dolls and making them talk to each other. And what's the boy going to be doing? He's going to have a bulldozer going, and just making all kind of sound effects. That's men. See, so it's not conditioned; it's natural, And as it was supposed to happen later on in life, we're supposed to channel that. We're supposed to refine it a little bit. So we stop growling, and we start being able to enunciate and present ourselves. But that ruggedness is still there within. It doesn't go away. Page 8, manhood today. So that was manhood. Now let's look at manhood today, where we stand today. Personal observation. Top of the page, I see basically 3 types of men. 1, traditionally masculine man described above. We just talked about. Type 2, the man who really never came of age, basically a boy in a man's body. That's what I just described too. Still grunting and acting out. And type 3, we start to see a rise of today, feminine man, who may actually have homosexual inclinations. Next paragraph, the point of this book is to emphasize the importance of genuine masculinity and promote it without compromise. Next paragraph, marriage and the family are ordered to the good of the spouses. This is from the Catechism. So that's something to be pointed out in the book. I'm not making this stuff up. I'll make some of my personal observations, but I'm not making it up. It's It's basic traditional Catholic church teaching on through the ages. You could trace it, keep tracing it back. But the way the current catechism presents marriage and the family are ordered to the good of the spouses and to the procreation and education of children. In my book, this is my teaching book. That's why it's the one that's kind of off-center in the front, but I got a T on it for my teaching. In my book, I circled the "and" because, you see, what society is trying to do with quote-unquote marriage today, homosexual unions, is to take this "and" out. See, because marriage is ordered toward, and we just got an explanation of marriage here from our new Cur Siesta. Marriage is ordered toward the good of spouses and the procreation of children. Used to be, and it still stands, obviously, but it used to be the way it was stated, that the primary purpose of marriage, and we're going to have that talk, right? The primary purpose of marriage is procreation of children. That obviously cannot happen in homosexual unions, which is why they can't get married. Whatever the legal side of it wants to call it. Okay. A man and a woman united in marriage together with their children form a family. That's what you call a family. All these other things they're trying to call family now is not a family. And it doesn't come from the legal system. It comes from the church. All right. Next page in italics. The principles in this book will orient men toward their leadership role in the family. Basically, that's the purpose of this book. And so we're going to talk about developing masculinity. So now to bring it all together, next page, page 10. Now, Catholic manhood today. We did manhood today. Now, Catholic manhood today. I'm combining the issues discussed thus far here into the perspective of an authentic Catholic lifestyle. Realistically, Catholic men as a group should be the most authentic, manly men. Not to say that others won't be, but Catholics, having the fullness of the truth, having the access to the fullness of grace because of the sacraments, should be the most manly of men. We must have the ability, next paragraph, to ward off any pressures to compromise our manhood and any temptations to become lax, indifferent, or frivolous in our responsibilities. To aid us, Christ gave us His church and the sacraments, having recourse to confession upon events of failure or the sustenance of the literal body of Christ Himself will equip us well in this. But again, I emphasize here confession, helping us out on that on our road, because we will be attacked on the spiritual side as well. So we go to confession to med tent. We get hit and go to the med tent, get patched up, and get back into action, get back on the field. Next page. We need manhood today, now, immediately. That's another concept of the today. The today on the front cover means how do we address manhood in the circumstances of today, but also the urgency that it's needed right now. This hasn't happened. The problems we have haven't happened overnight. They're not going to be fixed overnight either. So that means we have to be willing to engage in that wonderful virtue of long suffering. This is a long road, long battle. It's not just go out and play paintball or and be done with it. It's a long battle. Bottom of page 11. Here's the structure of the book. Let's flip over now to the table of contents. Back up, which is on page 3. Part 1. We're going to outline some masculine traits or virtues. Not that women don't possess any of these, but they are more pronounced in men because they're part of leadership. So each one of these virtues is explained in depth in each of these chapters. Strength, training, commitment, focus, standards, discipline, faith. That's our tools in the toolbox. So we're equipped with those tools that God gave us inborn naturally. The second half of the book is how do we put those into play? And we go through a progression. We got some young guys in here. Okay, so how do we start out? We start out as dependents, but then chapter 9, we become independent and thereby interdependent with our brothers. Okay, so nobody's strictly independent, but you become independent from your parents and then interdependent with your brothers. Then you form relationships, amongst friends, male and female. And then in chapter 11, you find that intimate relationship with that very one. Most people do. Most men are going to get married. Very few are going to stay single or go into the priesthood, but that happens too. That's not particularly what this book is about. Okay? Then you become a leader. Once you form a family, you're going to have children, you're going to become a leader. So you have to lead and love. And chapter 13, fathering kids. How do we father kids? And then as they get older, guiding them throughout life. And then 15 is the send-off of the mission. So that's the layout of the book. All right, so page 12. So let's get to it. Genuine Catholic manhood awaits. Are you up to the challenge? I didn't hear any answer. Are you up to the challenge? Are you up to the challenge? Yes. Okay, great. That's what I wanted to hear. I knew it. I just knew it. I knew it. Chapter 2, strength. Let's talk about strength. At the beginning of each chapter, we're going to have a scripture verse that is going to emphasize that particular trait, and then we're going to also have a definition of that particular trait. So, for God did not give as a spirit of cowardice, but rather of power and love and self-control. 2 Timothy chapter 1, verse 7. Strength is raw power, manifesting itself in our bodies, our character, and in our duty. When I said strength, what did y'all think of? What came to mind? I got an answer over here. Okay.
Power, like
maybe a muscular guy, maybe an athlete, maybe one of these warriors out on the battlefield. God gave us that strength.
Sword in hand.
The sword in hand. And in such a way to possess that type of strength. Men are typically going to be stronger than women, generally. People want to talk about outliers, but that's a general statement. Now, did he make us stronger so that we would suppress women or put them down or show them up or make them feel small? Obviously not. God made women after man to be his helpmate. Genesis 2, verse 18. We see that reciprocal love, that duty to each other, going back and forth in the roles we each possess. Page 15. Again, man once had to go out and slaughter a beast for his family to be fed. That once was what the reason we had this strength, right? Because we had to provide. We had to go, kill the wildebeest so that the family could eat. So how does that strength play out in the world today? What is it that we possess this strength for? Because what we have armed forces to protect us. We have law enforcement. We have fire departments. You almost don't have to do anything. It's pretty much all taken care of for us. Well, what we need it for is, and that's why I kind of question, and they're all good. It's all good stuff. But some of these, these wilderness weekends, these retreats, father-son retreats, and they go off play in the woods. But it's like, okay, what are you bringing home after that? Because we need to have some lessons once we get home about as far as how life is going to go. The reason we have that strength is in the middle of page 15, stamina for work. The most basic demand of our role as a husband and father is provider for the family. God created us so that we would have the ability to do this ourselves. The help we get from our wives isn't to go out and get a job too. It gives us is to tend to their duties around the house, which they are much more inclined to, so that we are free to do the things we have to do with our job. Now, of course, we still need to spend time with the family, do things with the kids, but she's going to be primary caregiver once the kids come along, and we have to be concerned with making sure we bring home the bacon. Page 16. Next paragraph, stamina is strength over the long haul. So you can have strength for a day or strength for a couple of days, but we're talking about 30, 35, 40-year careers, strength over the long haul, that we have to carry the load. When we look at the daily grind of the working world, it is very demanding, especially in the capitalist corporate world of today. You know, some of these socialist environments, everybody gets the same thing, so it's not really that competitive. Capitalist system is competitive. It's dog eat dog, so we have to be ready for that. Regardless, men possess the stamina to thrive in this kind of environment. In fact, there are duties God assigned to each of us as a result of the fall in the garden. And I go into Genesis a little bit here. To the woman he said, I will multiply thy sorrows and thy conceptions. And to man, Adam, he said, because thou hast hearkened to the voice of thy wife and hast eaten of the fruit, cursed is the earth and thy work, with labor and toil shalt thou eat thereof all the days of your life. Genesis 3, verses 16 to 17. Clearly demarcated the duties of each of the spouses in a marriage. There's no confusion like our society tries to do today. Toward the bottom, women's redemption would come through her pains in childbirth, man's from his toiling and laboring for nourishment, clothing, and shelter. Unfortunately, over to the next page, our culture today, as most men assume their wives will provide an income to the household, and their wives have similar expectations. Let's finish out that paragraph. But if we're honest with ourselves, we can see how both spouses working outside the home has caused severe weakening and ultimately breakdown of the family. This is not to say that sometimes it's necessary or that it's sinful or evil, but that it should not be considered as a norm. Okay? We should be working against that. We should be preparing for that not to happen. You know, most people prepare for that situation. Catholics should not do that. It becomes an occasion of sin, because when a woman has to work that much, she's going to often resort to contraception and sterilization, or what I call mutilation. All right, bottom of page 18. We could be tempted to think that a mother stays home to take care of her children and a husband works, that he in some way is superior to her. Actually, I look at my wife's role as superior to mine. What's more important than the formation of an immortal soul and the conscience of that child? Now, of course, we got input into that also, but she's there, you know, with them all day, every day in the education. To me, it's a higher calling to bring human beings into the world and to care for them. Again, viewed more pragmatically, our jobs are actually done at the service of our families. That's why if we got this thing oriented right, then we won't overwork, because we know that the work is toward the service of the family. It is in this way that we serve our families. Next page, 19. Men, this is our burden to carry. It can be done. We have been blessed with stamina to work steadily, productively for 30 to 40 or more years. We may need to convince our wives this is a way of life, as well as we all have been conditioned with the false ideas of our culture. Most women with natural mothering instincts will not want to leave a baby at the end of maternity leave in order to return to work. They should not be forced to do so. Next part of chapter 2 on strength is courage. Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is the facing and overcoming of fear. So there's always going to be that possibility of fear is present. I always say if you sense fear, look for the devil. You know, throw some holy water around, grab your scapula or something like that, because that's just the devil trying to work on you. Page 21. The apprehension of, this is from the Catechism, the apprehension of evil causes hatred, aversion, and fear of the impending evil. This movement ends in sadness at some present evil or in the anger that resists it. And here's where I say, you know, when you sense it, look for the devil. We have nothing to fear if we are in a state of grace. You know, nothing to fear. As the gentleman said earlier, you know, it's like we should be prepared to die any moment. So we don't have anything to fear. You know, what are they going to do to us? Kill us? Okay, Good.
Good.
You know, job's done. Let's see. So that being said, we have no reason to be timid. We have no reason to hold back. We should be aggressive and bold in whatever God's will is and whatever He's calling us to do. Next paragraph, one of the greatest manifestations of fear I experience in people, personal experience, is fear of failure. This fear stops men in their tracks. They are petrified and prevented from doing anything. This is why I have personally experienced the necessity of a supportive wife. See, so if you have a supportive wife, you feel like you can do anything. You know, there's no bounds. There's no bounds. You can do anything. So, but I've seen that a lot. You know, it's just this fear of failure. Who cares if you fail? Because I say there's no failure. There's just learning experiences. You know, people might, it's like, no, because I just went through something you probably were too scared to do. You know, put yourself out there on the line. It doesn't matter. If they mocked us, Jesus said they would, right? He said they were going to mock. So let's go do it. If we approach this with the understanding that there's a lesson in every failure, we can endeavor to take prudent risks. Okay, so let's not be crazy. And I always tell, and I did it myself, get advice. You know, whenever it's something substantial you're going to do, get advice from a knowledgeable person. But then don't, you know, once you have that knowledge and you know you need to do it, go out and do it. Prudent risk in the things God calls us to do. Probably the most common fear people have is a fear of poverty. Has there ever been a society that has had as much as we have in the United States of America? I mean, how can there be any fear of poverty in around us? I mean, I'm on Facebook, talk to people around the world. I mean, there's some impoverished places around the world. You know, Africa and such. Haiti, you know, that's poverty. So we don't, you know, we shouldn't have that kind of fear. And I'm gonna wrap it up with this. You know, my personal experience in this, my courage was tested when I decided to get into real estate, and a lot of people in here know all about that. And actually, looking back at the thing that made it the most challenge was discouragement that came from people who were ignorant about it. They weren't in it. They didn't know anything about it. And so they were just expressing their own fears and excusing themselves for why they didn't get into it. But you talk to somebody that was in it, somebody knowledgeable, it's old hat to them. They just knew it like the back of their hand. And they could easily give you confidence in doing. So lesson there is, you often hear people say, "What at the end of life, what do people say they most regret?" They regret for not having risked. They regret for having passed on things. They didn't regret playing it safe.